Heartwarming discovery, a single dad's room becomes life-changing shelter for a hidden millionaire. Jake was just another single dad in a quaint Ohio neighborhood, struggling to juggle his job at the auto repair shop and the whirlwind that was parenting his two energetic children, Mia and Ethan. Their modest home, with its peeling paint and cluttered corners, echoed laughter alongside the perpetual dread of unpaid bills. Every evening, as he tucked his kids into bed, Jake promised himself he would make things better for them. His heart swelled with love and determination, but sometimes, the weight of his worries made him feel like he was drowning. Little did he know, a storm was brewing, both outside in the skies and deep within his life. That fateful night, the heavens opened, unleashing torrents of rain that lashed against their window panes. The winds howled like a wounded beast, uprooting trees and tossing debris. Jake held Mia and Ethan close, telling them stories of bravery as the power flickered, casting long shadows on their walls. When dawn broke, a new constellation of troubles awaited them. Jake stepped outside and gasped. His new neighbor, Alex, had always kept to himself. Today, however, he was standing outside a ruined home, its foundations marred by mud and debris. The sudden pinch of vulnerability hit Jake squarely. The little warmth of his home felt like a stark contrast to Alex's loss. Without a second thought, Jake approached. "Hey, Alex, I have a spare room. You can stay with us until you get back on your feet." The words tumbled out, unplanned yet instinctive, as if a deeper part of him knew this was right. As the weeks flowed by, Jake and his children discovered Alex wasn't just a quiet artist. They shared meals filled with laughter, exchanging stories that painted vibrant images in their minds. Alex proved to be a great influence on Mia and Ethan, inspiring their creativity while building a bond of trust with Jake. But a barrier lay in the background, the stark contrast of their lives. Alex, it turned out, had walked away from a world of wealth, burdened by questions of morality and purpose. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. The summer sun warmed their hearts, yet the shadow of judgment was never far behind. At a neighborhood barbecue, a figure from Alex's past crashed into their lives. Intoxicating Patricia, his old business associate, who sprang from the crowd like a whip crack. "Look everyone, it's Alex, the millionaire turned hermit. How charming!" she called, laughter laced with disdain. Murmurs of envy flared up in a heartbeat. Jake's chest tightened. The very community that had once praised his act of kindness turned their backs, exchanging sneers and frowns. Their whispers ignited a fire in Jake's heart. Betrayal or loyalty? Was Alex still the kind and gentle man he knew? Or was he just wearing a mask over a world of privilege? Jake's insides churned with indignation and confusion, and he felt the fragile threads of their friendship stretching taut against the backdrop of judgment. Would they stand together against the storm of prejudice, or would societal norms tear apart what they had built? As the sky darkened with clouds, the air thickened with tension, reflecting the battle between friendship and the relentless grip of appearances. And in that moment of uncertainty, Jake felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps true worth was indeed rooted in character, and amidst the chaos, he'd have to trust his instincts. Would their friendship survive the fallout? Jake stood frozen, caught in the eye of the storm. He could feel the frantic energy of his neighbors burning through the air, thick with judgment and misunderstanding. He couldn't let Patricia's cutting remarks dismantle what he had forged with Alex. This sense of camaraderie wasn't just about sharing a roof, it was a choice, an act of humanity. "Patricia," Jake called out, his voice steadier than he felt. The crowd turned, a hush falling over the chatter. "You don't know him. You don't know what he has been through." His heart raced as he declared those words, both grounding him and leaving him exposed to scrutiny. "Oh please, Jake, spare us the heroics," she snapped, her laughter cutting through the tension like a knife. "What will you tell your kids when he goes back to his lavish lifestyle? That you were just a quaint pit stop?" Fury bubbled beneath Jake's skin. Mia's and Ethan's faces peeked around the crowd, wide-eyed and uncertain. They trusted him. He had to protect the friendship they had built, and, more importantly, the values he was trying to teach his kids. "It's not about wealth," Jake said, focusing on the kids. "It's about heart. It's about being there for each other." Alex stepped forward, his posture firm yet vulnerable. "I left that life for a reason. I wanted to find out who I really am outside the money." His voice, quiet yet powerful, resonated with sincerity. "I'm not here for pity or judgment. I just want to be part of a community, to be a friend." Some faces softened, but others remained rigid, unwilling to budge. Jake's stomach twisted. Were they truly ready to shun Alex based solely on his past? He glanced at Mia and Ethan, their expressions reflecting hope and concern. The moment weighed heavily on him. He was their protector, their guiding light, and he would not let them down. "Let us not judge someone based on where they've come from, but rather who they become," Jake urged, hoping his words could draw the neighbors closer, steer them away from their prejudices. A ripple of murmurs traveled through the crowd, a mixture of disbelief and contemplation. Then, just when he thought the conversation might take a turn, a voice chimed in from the back. "Yeah, but what if he's just playing another game? How do we know he isn't just using you, Jake?" Like a punch to the gut, those words lingered in the air. Jake felt the heat rise in his cheeks, a shameful mix of anger and vulnerability. What if they were right? What if Alex was hiding a deeper motive behind that kind smile? But when he looked at Alex, he saw a man who had faced storms far greater than any of these neighbors could imagine. "Look," Jake said, taking a deep breath, "maybe we don't have all the answers right now. But isn't the beauty of friendship about trusting one another, even when things are tough?" Suddenly, the ground underfoot felt unsteady. It wasn't just Alex who had put himself on the line. Jake realized he had stepped into a bigger fight, one for acceptance and friendship where judgments often ruled. As the crowd started to shift, opening up to his call for friendship, a flicker of hope ignited within him. Perhaps they could begin to rebuild not just walls, but bridges, but just then, a piercing sound erupted through the park, sending them all jumping. A commotion stirred as a pair of police officers arrived, their stern faces scanning the crowd. "We received reports about a disturbance," one officer pronounced, looking directly at Jake and Alex, suspicions bubbling just beneath the surface. Jake's heart sank. Had they crossed a line without realizing it? The mood swung ominously. Were they about to witness the very downfall they had fought against just moments ago? What would happen next? Would they defend their friendship when real fear entered the scene? Jake's mind raced as he met the piercing gaze of the officer. The world around him faded into a blur, leaving only the beating of his heart, loud and frantic. He could feel the tension crackling in the air, almost tangible as his neighbors stared, eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and judgment. Some were whispering, nudging one another, while others wore expressions that spoke of doubt. "Is everything all right here?" the officer continued, crossing his arms, his tone firm but not unkind. Jake took a shaky breath, trying to find his words. He felt Alex's presence beside him, a pillar of calm in the rising storm. "Yes, officer. We were just having a conversation about community support. It seems my friend here has faced some hardships." The officer's eyes flicked to Alex, scrutinizing him from head to toe. "Community support is fine, as long as no one is causing trouble." Jake swallowed hard, fighting the urge to lash out at the underlying accusation. "There is no trouble here, just a group of neighbors trying to understand one another." From the crowd, Patricia stepped forward, her voice dripping with disdain. "Seems like someone's narrative is a little too good to be true. You can't blame us for being cautious, can you? We don't know him at all." The officer nodded slightly, still evidently intrigued. "It's important to verify stories, especially in smaller communities." Alex took this moment to interject, a glimmer of determination in his eyes. "I don't expect anyone to simply take my word for it. I was privileged once, but I changed. I'm not trying to hide anything, I just want a chance to prove that I can be a good friend and neighbor." A few heads in the crowd nodded, but for many, the doubt still lingered in the air like a thick fog. Jake squeezed the bridge of his nose, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. How had it come to this? He thought they were on the verge of breaking barriers. Now they were all standing on opposite sides of a chasm, the fear of the unknown pulling them away from the unity they had begun to create. Another voice piped up from the back, this one calmer, more questioning. If he's telling the truth, how can we help him fit in? What is stopping us from giving him a chance? Exactly. Mia said, stepping forward, her small frame resolute. He is not just some rich guy looking for a new house. He is our friend. And we've seen him change. The officer's stern face softened slightly at Mia's words, but he remained vigilant. You all need to understand that sometimes people deceive us for their gain. I know it's hard to trust, Jake replied, putting a hand on Mia's shoulder, but are we really willing to deny someone the chance to show who they are, just because of where they came from? An unexpected silence fell. It was as if the world had paused, allowing the weight of Jake's question to settle in the hearts of those listening. After what felt like an eternity, one of the neighbors, a man named Greg whom Jake had known for years, stepped forward. I'll back Jake. I mean, there is nothing wrong with giving a guy a fair shake, right? We all deserve one. With that, murmurs spread throughout the crowd. Others began to nod, the defiance lightening. Could they really embrace someone so radically different? But just as hope began to blossom, a sudden shout interrupted the moment. Look out! The crowd turned as a group of teenagers raced through the park, laughter and chaos trailing behind them. Someone tripped, and a loud crash echoed as a child's bike collided with a picnic table. Jake felt himself lurch forward instinctively, fear racing through him. Would he have to protect Alex from that, too? Would this brief moment of acceptance get lost in the chaos? The officer turned back, ready to respond to the new crisis, but his gaze remained on Jake and Alex for a beat longer. In that instant, Jake realized they weren't just fighting for acceptance, they were up against a whirlwind of fear, misunderstanding, and chaos ready to unravel all they had built. How could they hold firm when faced with chaos all around? And would they overcome the challenges ahead, or would the bonds of friendship shatter before they had a chance to solidify? Jake's heart raced as he darted towards the noise, every pulse echoing the urgency building around him. The laughter and shouts of the teenagers mixed with the distressed cries of the child who had fallen, creating a discordant symphony of chaos. As Jake approached, he could see a little boy sitting on the ground, tears streaming down his face, while his bike lay abandoned beside him, wheels twisted against the picnic table. Hey, buddy, are you alright? Jake crouched beside the boy, brushing a hand over his shoulder in a comforting gesture. The officer had already moved in, assessing the situation with a trained eye. Jake could see the tension still threaded through the crowd behind him, the earlier moment of solidarity hanging by a thread. He could feel the whispers start to swirl again, uncertainty creeping back in. Did this incident change everything they had just begun to build? I think I'm hurt, the boy whimpered, looking up at Jake with wide eyes. With a reassuring smile, Jake replied softly, let us get you up, okay? I'll help you. Just then, Alex appeared at his side, his expression focused. I'll get some water, he said, squeezing Jake's shoulder before rushing off to a nearby cooler. The officer turned towards the crowd, raising a hand for quiet. Whoever has a phone, call an ambulance, he instructed, scanning the group for a responder. The murmurs turned to hurried movements, as people pulled their phones from their pockets, looking visibly shaken. Jake knelt beside the boy, feeling the heat of his own anxiety. What is your name? He asked gently. Timothy, the boy sniffed, his voice trembling. Well, Timothy, I'm Jake, and this is all just a little bump in the road. You're going to be fine, I promise, he said, keeping his tone steady, despite the brilliance of the chaos surrounding them. Just as he spoke, Alex returned with a bottled water, handing it over to Timothy. Drink this, it'll help, Alex encouraged him softly. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, a quick, silent understanding. It didn't matter if some still doubted. Here was friendship in action. As Timothy took a sip, the officer knelt beside them, the sternness of his demeanor softening. All right, I'm going to take a look. Can you show me where it hurts? He asked, his voice smoothing the air. While the officer examined Timothy, Jake scrambled to organize the scene. Everyone, let us clear some space. Make sure we give him the room he needs, he shouted, his voice cutting through the lingering fear. A few neighbors shuffled back, their faces a mix of concern and shifting perceptions. Jake glanced around, noticing a change sweeping through the crowd. Some were no longer watching through the lens of suspicion. Instead, they were rallying together to help, grabbing first aid kits, fetching ice packs, and coming forward to offer support in ways they could. Just as relief washed over him, Timothy's expression morphed from fear to curiosity. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, his innocence cutting through Jake's heart like a knife. "Because it's what friends do," Jake replied without thinking. The answer hung in the air, resonating now beyond the immediate chaos. Suddenly, Jake's words weren't just about this moment, they felt like a rallying cry for something larger. A flicker of recognition crossed the faces of some neighbors, whispers about hesitation fading into something warmer. But Jake's moment of triumph didn't last long. He turned to Alex, ready to revel in the shared victory, but the look on his friend's face froze him in his tracks. Alarm blazed in Alex's eyes as he pointed into the distance. "Jake! Look!" Jake followed Alex's gaze, his heart dropping when he saw what had caught his attention. A figure loomed at the edge of the park, a man standing with an air of authority, arms crossed and eyes narrowed toward the scene unfolding. "Who's that?" Jake whispered, dread pooling in his stomach. "I'm not sure," Alex replied, a frown pressing on his brow. "But he doesn't look friendly." Panic surged through Jake's chest again, the question echoing in his mind: would they be able to hold on to their fragile progress, or would yet another obstacle threaten to pull them apart? The man at the edge of the park took a step forward, his silhouette growing clearer against the fading light. Danny, a neighbor and often overlooked presence in the community, nudged his way through the crowd, the urgency in his stride evident. "What's going on?" he barked, eyes darting from Jake to the boy on the ground to the approaching stranger. There was concern etched on his face, but Jake could see something like recognition flickering there too. Before Jake could form a response, the officer stood, dusting off his knees and turning toward the newcomer. "Excuse me, sir, but this is a crime scene," he declared in a tone that dared challenge the man's intent. The man smirked, his arms still crossed. "Crime scene? I think you're mistaken, officer." His voice was smooth, almost cold, and it sent a shiver down Jake's spine. "It looks like just a kid falling off his bike. I'm here to help, or to protect, perhaps." "Protect?" Alex cryptically whispered to Jake, his brow arched in disbelief. With Timothy still shaken on the ground, Jake felt the weight of the moment pressing down. The small community they had pieced together in the last hour suddenly seemed on the brink of fracture. Conversations sputtered, fear creeping back into their minds. Could this man be another reason for their distrust? "Stay back, please," the officer warned, stepping forward slightly to maintain a barrier. Jake understood the officer's instinct to shield them, but his heart begged to climb over that wall of fear. "Tim, you okay?" Jake leaned down, keeping his voice light. Timothy was clutching the water bottle but hadn't moved. "We just need to make sure you're all right." The boy nodded, sniffing. I think my leg hurts, but I am okay." His determination began to shine through, and in that moment, Jake saw hope ripple through the gathered crowd. They were gathering again, forging back into that warmth they found just moments ago. In the midst of his swirling thoughts, another voice broke into the scene. "That's enough, Derek!" yelled a woman from the outskirts of the crowd, her tone aggressive. "Leave the officer alone." Everyone turned to see Claire, a local school teacher and fierce protector of the neighborhood, striding toward them. It was as if her mere presence diffused the tension in the air. "You don't intimidate us," she added, confidence radiating. For a second, the man named Derek hesitated, the cocky smirk fading. The murmurs of support began to swell, drowning out the chaos and encouraging Timothy's healing. But then, Derek looked directly at Jake, his stare locking on, like he could see the very heart of the community that tried to bloom today. "All of you are too naive. You don't understand the real world. You're just playing pretend." A chill entered Jake's heart. Was it true? He thought of Timothy, of how the boy believed in kindness amidst chaos. Was it naive to trust? "There's strength in kindness, Derek," Jake managed to say, suddenly feeling more connected than ever to his neighbors. Each of them had stood together, risking vulnerability even in the face of uncertainty. Derek laughed, but there was nothing warm about it. "We'll see how strong your kindness is when the real world comes knocking," he said, then turned, walking away as quickly as he had arrived. Murmurs filled the air, but they were different now. Resilience pulsing through the crowd, they began to talk about what they had done, how they had chosen to stay together against a looming threat. "Jake, that was incredible," Alex breathed, eyes sparkling with admiration, but as Timothy leaned against Jake, his small figure weighed heavy with lingering pain, the reality lingered in the back of Jake's mind. Shadows sometimes came back, and they had to stand firm. He glanced at the remaining crowd, feeling the mix of uplift and worry on their faces. "Everyone, we made it this far," Jake called out, lifting his voice over the murmurs. "Let us not give up now. For each other." Across the park, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows, just as doubts began creeping back in. Would their pact hold against the next challenge they were about to face? When he turned back to look at Timothy, the boy's grip on his hand tightened just a little more. It felt emblematic of the rising hope and the uncertainty that still lay ahead. As the last traces of daylight faded, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the fight for their community was only just beginning. As darkness descended over the park, the urgency of the moment shifted. The initial shock was giving way to a compulsion shared by everyone present to take action. Jake felt the warmth of Timothy's hand but also the weight of uncertainty pressing down on his shoulders. "Let us get you up, buddy," he said, bending to help Timothy stand. The boy winced slightly, but there was a spark of determination in his eyes. Alex quickly rushed over to support him on the other side, his freckled face looking fiercely protective. "Careful now," Jake said, keeping his voice soothing, but inside, he could feel the heat of adrenaline coursing through him. As they helped Timothy limp away from the grass that had been tainted by fear, whispers ran through the crowd. The community, once shaken, was now visibly rallying. Claire stood nearby, her arms crossed, surveying the crowd with an air of command. "We can't let fear dictate how we respond," she shouted, her voice slicing through the murmurs like a beacon. "We've got to come together, just like we did today. For Timothy." A chorus of agreement erupted around them. Jake's heart surged. He could see it, the strength of their togetherness was transforming the mood. They were more than spectators in a crisis, they were allies in a shared mission. "Let us set up a neighborhood watch," Danny suggested, visibly fired up. "It's time we looked out for one another more. Form a group, watch the park, talk to the kids." Jake nodded vigorously, feeling the rush of possibility in the air. "And let us meet regularly. We can create a safe space here. Bring the kids out and have family games, spread some positivity." Timothy piped up, "Can I help?" "I want to help." His eyes sparkled with eagerness, momentarily forgetting his pain. "All hands welcome," Jake responded with a smile, kneeling down to be eye level with the boy. "You have the biggest heart, Tim. Your bravery will inspire others." Slowly the crowd began to share ideas. They discussed organizing block parties, promoting kindness in schools, even starting a neighborhood newsletter. The energy became infectious. People were shaking hands, gathering contact information, and laughing, as if brushing the weight of fear aside. But deep within Jake, Derek's words echoed. "What happens when the real world comes knocking?" The thought lingered like a storm cloud hanging over their moment of unity. Standing next to Alex, Jake could see the worry in his friend's eyes. "You okay?" he asked gently. "I don't know, man. What if the next time is worse?" Alex whispered back, his voice barely above the din. "Then we face it together. We learned today that kindness makes us stronger." "We can't lose that," Jake replied firmly. As the community began to disperse, laughter mingled with fading twilight. The warmth of the earlier bond still ignited their hearts, but darkness loomed, each person knowing they had touched something deep today. Timothy leaned into Jake as they walked home, and Jake felt the pulse of their little community in that single moment, fragile yet strong. But as they reached the corner of the street, Jake caught sight of a figure lingering near the park's entrance. It was Derek, standing still and watching them from the shadows. The faint glimmer of streetlight caught the edge of his smirk, a hint of something challenging lingering in his eyes. Jake's heart raced. What did Derek want now? The question loomed large, pressing against the warmth they had just built together. "Timothy, stay close," Jake murmured, feeling the familiar inkling of unease take root once more. Was this truly the start of something beautiful, or had they just put a target on their backs? Jake's instincts kicked in. He moved, forming a protective barrier between Timothy and Derek. The boy could sense the tension, his small hand tightened on Jake's waist. "What do you want, Derek?" Jake called out, trying to sound more assertive than he felt. Derek stepped into the light, his smirk evaporating as a shadow fell across his face. "Just wanted to see the little show you all put on," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Looks like you've made a bunch of new friends. Real cute." "Leave us alone," Alex interjected, stepping up beside Jake, chest puffed out. The bravado didn't erase the raw mess of emotions in his eyes. "Or what? You'll be my hero?" Derek laughed, but there was an edge underneath. "What's the plan now? The world isn't as simple as you think. Your little neighborhood watch isn't going to stop the bad stuff from happening." Anger boiled up within Jake. "We're not naive, Derek. We're standing together. That matters." The crowd around them was watching, some whispering among themselves as they sensed the confrontation brewing. It was clear they felt this was an awkward game of truth where stakes were high and shoulders stood stiff. "Standing together? Sounds lovely," Derek said, taking a step forward. "But what if I told you that unity could be your downfall? You think you've got it all figured out, but enough." Clara's voice pierced through the darkness, immediately gaining attention. She stepped forward, exuding a strong resolve. "This isn't the time or the place for your games. We stand here not for division but for strength. You're welcome to join us or leave. Your choice." Derek paused, caught slightly off guard by her firmness. The flicker of annoyance in his eyes didn't hide the brief flash of contemplation. But just like that, he shrugged off her words. "See you around, then," he called back over his shoulder, beginning to retreat into the shadows once more. Jake's body relaxed on seeing Derek back away, though unease still lingered. "What was that about?" he muttered quietly as Derek disappeared. "I don't know," but Alex started, but Claire interrupted. "Yeah, we need to be smart," she said, glancing at Timothy. "With kids involved, we have to keep them safe. This isn't about fear, it's about vigilance." Timothy's eyes darted between the adults, uncertainty creeping in once again. "Are we okay?" he whispered. Jake knelt down, meeting Timothy's gaze. "We're more than okay. We have each other, and you've done something really brave today. You stood up, and that's amazing." A small smile crept onto Timothy's face, but Jake could see shadows still flickering in his eyes. "Let us get home," Jake said, giving Timothy a gentle nudge forward while Alex and Claire flanked them. Yet, an unsettling feeling hung over Jake, the realization that this event was far from over and that Derek represented more than just an angry face in the dark. As they walked, whispers of plans filled the air, but Jake's heart was not settled. Something inside him feared that Derek's threat was more than empty words. It felt like a warning wrapped in bravado. Once home, Jake pulled out his phone. He needed to ensure everyone was on the same page. Something didn't sit right, and a teen would need to be swift. He dialed Claire first, giving her his thoughts. But just as she answered, a loud crash echoed from outside, a resounding sound that shattered the evening's calm. "What was that?" Clara's voice escalated with an edge of urgency. "I don't know, but I'll check it out," Jake replied, feeling an adrenaline rush ignite. He turned to Timothy, who was clutching his teddy bear, fear etched into his young face. "Stay here, buddy," he said firmly, even as his own heart raced. It was too late to pause now. Something was happening, and he'd have to confront it head on. What lay outside could tip the fragile balance they had fought so hard to build. Without another moment's hesitation, Jake stepped outside again into the encroaching darkness, determined to protect what mattered most. As he descended the porch steps, he couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get a lot more complicated. Jake squinted into the dark, the soft hum of crickets suddenly feeling airy in the stillness. His heart pounded as he strained to listen, waiting for any sign of movement. The crash echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder that their fragile peace could shatter at any moment. "Timothy, stay close to the door," he called over his shoulder, heart tightening at the sound of the boy's soft whimper. Jake desperately wished he could shield him from all of this. With each cautious step away from the familiarity of home, the leaves crunched underfoot like whispered secrets. The streetlights cast long shadows, amplifying his sense of dread. A series of muffled whispers surrounded him, floating through the air like specters. He instinctively touched the pocket where his phone lay, wishing for the comfort of connection. Then, a figure shifted from behind a parked car, and adrenaline shot through him. Was it Derek coming back for trouble? "Who's there?" Jake called, trying not to let his fear show. He hadn't planned to be the protective dad tonight, he just wanted a quiet evening. A figure stepped into the weak light from the porch, revealing a girl around Timothy's age, her wide eyes reflecting uncertainty. I am sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." Jake's heart settled just a notch. "What are you doing out here?" "I was looking for my cat," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "She ran away, and I thought I heard her meowing." The innocence in her voice drew him in. "Do you know her name?" "Marbles," she whispered, glancing nervously around, as if afraid Marbles would be lurking nearby. Jake did a quick mental scan. Cats were notoriously clever at hiding. He glanced back toward the house, checking on Timothy. The boy was still rooted to the doorframe, clutching the teddy bear tighter than ever, confused but curious. "Let us help her find Marbles then," Jake said, returning his attention to the girl. "What does she look like?" She took a breath, straightening her posture. "She's orange and white, with green eyes." "Okay. I'll keep an eye out," Jake assured her, stepping further into the night. "What's your name?" "Lila," she turned slightly, gaining a bit of confidence. "And thanks for helping." Together, they started to wander down the street, calling for Marbles as if the cat might suddenly appear out of the shadows. "Why were you outside anyway?" Lila asked, glancing up at him curiously. "Just checking on things. It's been a weird night." Weird didn't he even begin to cover it. Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach again, remembering Derek and the threats wrapped in bravado. "And you?" "Just got home from my friend's house," she said, her voice trailing off. "Things aren't great lately. Mom keeps saying we have to watch out for the neighborhood. Some bad stuff has been going on." Jake's heart sank. He felt the weight of all the children who carried these worries on their small shoulders. "Yeah, I get that. We all need to look out for each other, right?" She nodded eagerly, her eyes bright. "That's what my dad says. Teamwork. Teamwork is important," Jake agreed, feeling a sense of warmth amid the chaos. But then, glancing back toward home, the heavier thoughts raced back in. They walked a few more blocks, calling for Marbles until frustration began to creep in. "Come on, where are you, kitty?" Jake murmured, the faintest hint of worry rising in his chest for both Lila and Timothy waiting back home. Suddenly, a familiar chime filled the air. A soft, pleading meow echoed from behind a nearby bush. Lila's eyes widened, and they rushed toward the sound, hearts racing. "Marbles!" she half-shouted, exuberant with hope. As they rounded the corner, Jake spotted the silhouette of the little cat. It was perched on the edge of the flower bed, looking curious and out of place. Relief flooded through him. He could almost forget the lurking shadows of Derek and his threats, but just as Lila reached for her cat, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed. Heavy, deliberate. Jake's gut twisted. They weren't alone. "Hey, kids!" A voice boomed from the darkness, sending chills down his spine. "Run!" Jake yelled, instinct kicking in. Lila's eyes widened in terror, but he grabbed her hand, pulling her toward safety. All the fears that had hovered like dark clouds now loomed large, threatening to burst wide open. Whoever was approaching, they weren't here for friendly reasons. Jake felt the adrenaline surge, his mind racing with thoughts of Timothy and which direction they should take back home, to safety, or somewhere that might provide an escape. The night, once filled with the simple pursuit of a lost cat, had spiraled into something that could change everything in an instant. And he had to act, before it was too late. Jake pulled Lila tight against him as they dashed down the street. The gravel crunched beneath their hurried footsteps, each sound feeling like a trigger, reminding him of the danger behind them. His heart raced, pounding in sync with the heavy footsteps gaining on them. "Where do we go?" Lila gasped, glancing up at him with wide, terrified eyes. Her small hand felt fragile in his grip, and he could sense her fear blending with his own. "Just keep running. We need to find somewhere safe," Jake shouted back, scanning the dimly lit street. Their options were limited. A brief glance showed some houses were dark, their occupants likely unaware of the chaos unfolding outside. "Jake, this way." Lila suddenly turned, pointing toward a narrow alley between two houses. Jake hesitated. It was cramped and overshadowed by looming trees, but they had no time to think. With a quick nod, he squeezed through the gap, Lila right behind him. As they darted into the alley, the world outside faded away. The air felt thicker, wrapped in heavy silence, yet they instinctively pressed on. Shadows danced menacingly along the walls, the flickering light of a distant street lamp barely penetrating the alley's steps. "Keep quiet," Jake whispered, hearing the footsteps echoing still. They needed to hide, to blend into the night. They crouched behind a trash bin, hearts thumping, and Jake held his breath, waiting. The sounds grew closer, and he felt Lila tremble beside him, her breath shaky and uneven. He wanted to comfort her, to give her strength, but he felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down just as heavily on his own chest. Then, the footsteps slowed, hovering just outside their hiding place. Jake's muscles coiled as he leaned in closer to Lila, who clenched her eyes shut, desperation tightening her small frame. "Where are they?" A voice growled, deeper and more threatening than before. Jake swallowed hard, peeking just over the edge of the trash bin. He barely caught a glimpse of a figure in the darkness, a broad silhouette dressed in all black, looking around, searching. Then it clicked. Derek. Jake fought the urge to curse under his breath. The panic was palpable. "Stay quiet," he hissed softly to Lila. They could hear him muttering, something about needing to scare off the pests. With every second that ticked by, Jake felt his grip on reality slip slightly. He couldn't let this go further. Not with Lila, not with Timothy waiting back home, oblivious to the danger that lurked. "Not here," Derek continued, frustration rising. "Miriam told me there were lurkers out tonight. We need to find them." Jake's heart raced at the mention of Miriam. She was the one who wanted to stir trouble, the one who had whispered about bad things happening in the neighborhood. The fear threatened to choke him, but he couldn't show it. "Let us split up. I'll take the alleyways," Derek suggested, moving away. Panic surged through Jake. He'd have to move fast. "Now!" he urged Lila, pulling her up. They darted further into the shadows, zigzagging through narrow alleyways, the cold air biting against their skin. "Wait, my cat." Lila hesitated, casting a worried glance over her shoulder. A longing for marbles tightened her features, and it broke Jake's heart. "Lila, we need to go. We'll find her later, I promise," he urged, his voice frantic. They sprinted down several more streets, zigzagging and trying to lose Derek. Each turn felt like a prayer, a desperate wish for safety in the chaos. Finally, they spotted a large community center glowing faintly, a refuge welcoming weary souls. "In there!" Jake gestured, feeling a speck of hope rise in his chest. As they burst through the double doors, that fleeting sense of safety surrounded them. Inside, the world felt quieter, the tension easing just a notch. They were home, at least for the moment. But he could sense the danger still lurking outside, waiting. "Do you think we lost him?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Jake admitted, exhaustion creeping in. "But we need to stay here until we're sure it's safe." As they sat in the center's shadows, the distant echoes of laughter floated in from another room. Jake realized it was just the kind of normal he needed to hold on to. Teams can fight together, he remembered Lila saying earlier. And they would fight together again, for Timothy, for marbles, for a future unspoiled by fear. Little by little, he felt hope creeping back in. What if they could turn this night around, And just then, as he glanced at Lila, a thought crashed into his mind. Timothy. The crushing realization hit. They had to find a way back. But the true battle would be what they faced together, filled with danger and unexpected alliances. One thing was clear, the night was far from over. Jake's heart thundered in his chest as the need to get back to Timothy surged through him. He couldn't leave the boy alone, not in a world where danger loomed just outside. The community center was a temporary refuge, but he knew they had to regroup, to strategize. Lila, he whispered urgently, we have to get back to my son. Are you ready for this? Lila's eyes shone with determination. I'm ready, Jake. He nodded, feeling her resolve fortify his own. Together, they made their way toward the exit, the quiet hum of safe laughter growing distant as they slipped into the night. The streets felt different as they moved, shadows thickening with the knowledge of uncertainty. Each step felt deliberate, as if Jake was weaving between danger and hope with every heartbeat. Stay close, he murmured, guiding Lila through the darkness. He kept his eyes peeled for any sign of danger, acutely aware of how their simple mission to find a lost cat had turned into a chaotic scramble for safety. As they approached the park, Jake's breath quickened. The memories of earlier were still fresh, the laughter, the camaraderie, the bond they had forged. But now, the shadows felt heavier, the air laced with the remnants of tension that had constricted around their shoulders throughout the evening. Suddenly, a flicker of light caught Jake's attention. A small figure was moving near the house, a familiar silhouette. Timothy. Jake called softly, heart racing with the potent mix of relief and urgency. He stepped forward, holding his breath. Lila followed closely behind, her eyes wide. Timothy turned, his face lighting up with a mix of fear and joy as he saw the two of them. Jake. Lila. I thought I lost you. Jake rushed to kneel beside him, wrapping his arms around the boy and pulling him close. I'm so sorry, buddy. I would never leave you. He felt the warmth of Timothy's small, fragile form sink into him, grounding him once more. Just then, another sound echoed, a drumming of feet approaching, and Derek's shadow loomed over the trio from the edge of the park. The fear flared up inside him again, but he took a steadying breath. We need to move, now. As if rehearsed, Timothy reached for Lila's hand and Jake grabbed the other, forming a protective barrier around his son. They darted toward the street, footsteps heavy against the pavement, not daring to look back. Derek's right behind us. Lila exclaimed, breathless from the urgency. Keep running. Jake urged, adrenaline surging through him. They dashed toward the closest house, an old, welcoming structure featuring a brightly colored door. Swinging it open swiftly, they stumbled inside, the warmth wrapping around them like a thick blanket. We made it, Jake gasped, looking back at the door. Fear still lingered at the back of his mind. The sound of the door creaking closed pulled them back. They were safe for now. Jake's heart slowed as he took in the warm space, decorated with family pictures and soft light. People were gathered, chatting lusciously, oblivious to the storm simmering just outside. Can we stay here? Timothy whispered, his eyes wide and pleading. Just for a minute, Jake reassured him, gaze darting about, searching for a way to ensure they were truly safe. We need to gather our strength and figure out what is happening. As they huddled together, an older woman noticed them and approached, concern unconcealed. Are you all right? You seem shaken. Jake nodded, feeling more vulnerable than ever, but he didn't want to show fear. We are, thank you. Just had some trouble. I'll call the police, better to be safe, she suggested, already moving toward the phone. No. Jake interjected, feeling a rush of heat. That might make things worse. But as the woman hesitated, Lila spoke up. We can explain everything. We just want to make sure we're safe. The urgency in her voice held weight, and the woman finally nodded. All right, then. We'll figure this out together. As they stood there, Jake felt the shifting dynamic around them. It was a gathering of safety, of community that could stand united. Timothy's small grasp on his arm filled him with warmth. He felt honored to protect both the children. They were bound by courage, by kindness, ready to face what lay ahead. That's it. Jake said, his voice steadying. We need to gather everyone together. Strength in numbers, right? If we work together, we can protect our neighborhood. Yeah. Lila chimed in, her enthusiasm infectious. The energy in the room shifted briskly. Soon, they began plotting their next steps, calling on neighbors to join them. The flicker of hope ignited brighter, a chance to reclaim their sense of community. It wasn't just about safety anymore, it was about coming together to rebuild trust and a sense of belonging. And in that moment, wrapped in laughter and whispers of resilience, Jake knew they had the power to rise above the fear that they could crush the darkness with the light of their unity. Once outside again, where the stars had begun to dot the sky, Jake felt ready. They weren't just individuals anymore, they were a community. They would stand against whatever storms loomed on the horizon, together. This was their moment. And now, more than ever, the time had come to safeguard their hearts. You need to subscribe now if you want to be part of this journey. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Leave a like now to help us spread this message of hope and courage. Comment below about how this story made you feel you are an essential part of this community.